Let's talk in British English. Elara often dreamt of speaking English with the smooth, melodic cadence of a Londoner, just like characters in her favorite British dramas. She understood nearly everything she read and heard, yet whenever she tried to form a sentence herself, a strange, hesitant silence would descend upon her, frustrating her immensely during her daily interactions. This persistent gap between comprehension and confident articulation felt like an insurmountable chasm, leaving her feeling quite deflated. She had spent countless hours with textbooks, grammar exercises, and vocabulary lists, meticulously absorbing rules and definitions. Her knowledge of English grammar was, by many standards, exceptional, almost encyclopedic. Yet, when faced with a real-life conversation, her well-honed theoretical understanding seemed to vanish, replaced by a jumble of uncoordinated thoughts and an embarrassing stammer that truly undermined her confidence. This common conundrum, understanding perfectly but struggling to speak fluently, is a hurdle many language learners encounter. It's a mental block, a fear of making mistakes, and a lack of spontaneous recall that often holds brilliant minds captive. Elara yearned for a way to bridge this frustrating divide, to unlock the natural flow of conversation that seemed so effortless for native speakers she encountered. She often observed how other people talked in English, noticing their intonations, their informal contractions, and their casual turns of phrase. It wasn't just about vocabulary, it was the rhythm, the unspoken nuances, and the cultural context that truly defined authentic communication. Elara realized she needed more than just academic knowledge. She needed to internalize the very spirit of the language. A wise old librarian, Mrs. Higgins, with her spectacles perched on her nose and a gentle smile, noticed Elara's silent struggles during her weekly visits. "My dear," she'd say in her soft, comforting voice, "language isn't just about rules. It's a living, breathing thing. You must immerse yourself completely to truly grasp its essence." Mrs. Higgins suggested a rather unconventional approach, one that seemed less like studying and more like an adventure. "Forget the rote memorization for a while," she advised. "Instead, let's explore the world through English eyes. Begin by reading, truly devouring stories that captivate your imagination and transport you to different places." "Why you must read English," Mrs. Higgins explained, "is not merely for vocabulary acquisition, although that's certainly a bonus. Reading exposes you to natural sentence structures, idiomatic expressions, and various narrative voices. It helps you unconsciously absorb the language's rhythm and flow, building an intuitive understanding beyond mere grammatical rules." So, Elara started with light British fiction, tales of whimsical adventures, and charming village life. She chose books that genuinely interested her, rather than those prescribed for learners. This simple shift made the process far more enjoyable and less like a chore, allowing her to truly lose herself in the narratives without constant self-correction. As she read, she didn't stop for every unfamiliar word. Instead, she tried to infer meanings from context, keeping the story's momentum. If a word appeared repeatedly and seemed crucial, she'd briefly check its definition. But the primary goal was seamless comprehension of the narrative, letting the language wash over her like a gentle tide. This consistent exposure began to subtly rewire her brain. Phrases and sentence patterns that once felt foreign started to feel familiar, almost innate. She was internalizing the language's architecture without even realizing it, building a subconscious repository of correct and natural English expressions, a foundational element for future fluency development. Next, Mrs. Higgins introduced the power of listening. Listen and practice, she urged. It's the vital second pillar. You've been listening, yes, but now you must listen with purpose, actively engaging with the sounds, the intonations, and the emotional nuances conveyed through speech. This was a new challenge for Elara. Elara began listening to British podcasts on topics she enjoyed: history, true crime, gardening, even cookery shows. She watched British television series without subtitles whenever possible, pushing herself to grasp the dialogue purely through sound and context, an exercise that initially felt incredibly demanding but proved incredibly rewarding. Pay attention to how different characters express emotions, Mrs. Higgins instructed. Notice the subtle shifts in tone when someone is sarcastic, happy, or sad. English speakers convey so much through inflection. Mimic these sounds in your head. It's a form of mental rehearsal, preparing your vocal cords for actual production. She also started repeating phrases she heard, shadowing speakers from podcasts or shows. Not out loud at first, but internally, mouthing the words, trying to match their rhythm and pronunciation. This silent, internal practice was less intimidating and allowed her to experiment with sounds without the pressure of an audience. Then came the practice component, which Mrs. Higgins insisted was non-negotiable. You can read and listen endlessly, my dear, but if you don't actually produce the language, that barrier between understanding and speaking will remain firmly in place, she stated with firm but kind conviction. This made Elara nervous. Her first attempts at speaking were, predictably, clumsy. She'd stutter, search for words, and feel her face flush with embarrassment. But Mrs. Higgins reminded her gently, every native speaker was once a baby, making incoherent noises. Fluency is not about perfection. It's about persistent effort and embracing imperfection. Mrs. Higgins suggested finding a language exchange partner online, someone who wanted to learn her native language in exchange for helping her with English. Elara was hesitant but agreed. Her first few video calls were terrifying, filled with awkward silences and laborious attempts at conversation. But she persevered, remembering Mrs. Higgins's words. The beauty of a language exchange, she discovered, was the mutual understanding of struggle. Her partner, a cheerful lad from Manchester named Liam, was incredibly patient. They started with simple topics, sharing details about their day, their hobbies, and their cultures, slowly building up their conversational stamina and confidence. Elara also began narrating her daily activities aloud to herself when she was alone. I'm putting the kettle on now, she'd say. The water's boiling. Oh, look, a robin in the garden. This seemingly silly exercise built automaticity, connecting thoughts directly to English words without the need for translation. She started carrying a small notebook, jotting down new phrases or interesting expressions she encountered in her reading or listening. Later, she'd try to incorporate these into her internal monologues or, eventually, her conversations with Liam. It was a conscious effort to expand her active vocabulary and natural expressions. The best way to learn English, Elara realized, was not a single method but a holistic blend, a continuous cycle of input and output. It wasn't about finding one magical solution, but rather about integrating language into every facet of her daily life, making it a natural, organic part of her routine. She recognized that fluency wasn't about speaking flawlessly, but about speaking smoothly, with confidence, and without excessive hesitation. It was about being able to express complex thoughts and emotions without constantly searching for the right words, allowing the conversation to flow naturally. Elara started embracing mistakes as opportunities for learning rather than sources of shame. When Liam corrected her politely, she took notes and tried to implement the feedback immediately. This shift in mindset transformed her learning journey from a daunting task into an exciting exploration. Mrs. Higgins also emphasized the importance of cultural immersion, even from afar. Understand the culture, she advised, and you'll understand the language better. Watch British films, listen to British music, follow British news. This contextual understanding enriches your linguistic comprehension immensely. Elara began exploring British history documentaries and travel vlogs, learning about the regions, the dialects, and the quirky customs. This not only provided her with fascinating conversational topics, but also deepened her appreciation for the intricacies and nuances of British English, adding layers to her understanding. She realized that how other people talk in English varied significantly, not just from country to country, but even within Britain itself. Liam's Mancunian accent was distinct from the BBC presenter's standard English, yet both were perfectly valid and understandable, teaching her adaptability. This exposure to various accents and speech patterns helped her develop a more robust auditory comprehension. She learned to discern subtle differences in pronunciation and intonation, making her a more versatile listener and, consequently, a more confident speaker capable of adapting her own delivery. The initial frustration of, "I understand English, but I can't speak well," slowly began to dissipate. The consistent reading was filling her mental library with ready-made phrases, the listening was tuning her ear to natural rhythm, and the speaking practice was building her confidence and muscle memory. Elara started small, focusing on simple, everyday conversations. She would rehearse what she wanted to say before a call with Liam, sometimes even writing down bullet points. This preparation reduced her anxiety and allowed her to participate more actively in the discussions, gradually expanding her comfort zone. She learned to paraphrase when she couldn't find the exact word. Instead of getting stuck, she'd try to explain her meaning using simpler vocabulary she knew. This strategy kept the conversation flowing and prevented those awkward, frustrating silences that used to plague her earlier attempts at speaking. The importance of reading English, she now understood, was paramount not just for vocabulary, but for developing an intuitive sense of what sounds right. It provided her with models of correct syntax and appropriate register, allowing her to build more complex and natural-sounding sentences herself. Moreover, reading regularly expanded her world knowledge. She encountered diverse topics, ideas, and perspectives, which in turn gave her more to talk about during her conversations. It fueled her curiosity and provided a rich tapestry of content for discussion, making her interactions more engaging. The process of active listening, beyond passive reception, was equally transformative. She started identifying specific grammatical structures and vocabulary in use, recognizing them in the wild. This helped her connect the theoretical knowledge from textbooks to practical, everyday communication, cementing her understanding. She also realized the power of listening for intonation and stress. English is a stress-timed language, meaning certain syllables are emphasized more than others. Mastering this improved her own pronunciation and made her speech sound much more natural to native speakers, aiding comprehension. As for practice, Elara embraced various forms. Beyond direct conversation, she engaged in thinking in English, trying to narrate her thoughts purely in the target language. This mental exercise solidified her ability to construct sentences without relying on translation from her first language. She also tried short bursts of free speaking, setting a timer for 2 or 3 minutes, and talking continuously about a random topic, no matter how nonsensical. This exercise focused on fluency over accuracy, helping her overcome hesitation and build momentum in her spoken output. The way of learning English, she concluded, was deeply personal but universally founded on consistency and genuine engagement. There was no single best method, but rather a combination of strategies tailored to individual learning styles and preferences, all underpinned by regular, enjoyable interaction with the language. Elara found that incorporating English into her hobbies was particularly effective. She joined an online book club that discussed British novels, forcing her to articulate her opinions and engage in literary discussions in English, which was both challenging and incredibly rewarding for her. She also started following British chefs on social media, watching their cooking videos, and trying out recipes written in English. This practical application of the language made learning feel less abstract and more directly relevant to her daily life and interests, maintaining her motivation. The fear of making mistakes, which had once paralyzed her, slowly receded. She understood that communication was the primary goal, and minor errors were merely signposts on the road to improvement, not insurmountable obstacles. This liberation from self-consciousness was a huge step forward. Mrs. Higgins beamed when Elara next visited the library. "Your confidence is blossoming, my dear," she observed. "You carry yourself differently. That's the true mark of progress. Not just what you say, but how you feel saying it, and how effortlessly the words now seem to flow." Elara recounted her journey, explaining how consistent reading had built her passive knowledge, how active listening had tuned her ear to the rhythm of British English, and how consistent practice, however imperfect, had finally unlocked her voice, allowing her to express herself freely. She spoke of the joy of finally being able to participate fully in conversations, of understanding jokes and cultural references, and of forming genuine connections with English speakers without that constant, gnawing anxiety in the pit of her stomach that had always been there. The best way to learn English, she decided, was the way that kept you consistently engaged and motivated. For her, it was a blend of authentic materials, captivating books, interesting podcasts, and real conversations, rather than purely academic exercises from textbooks. She realized that while textbooks provided foundational grammar, true fluency blossomed from real-world exposure and interaction. It was the messy, unpredictable nature of actual communication that truly honed her skills and transformed her from a hesitant learner into a confident speaker. Why reading is important, she articulated, goes beyond vocabulary. It's about developing an intuition for correct English. It allows your brain to absorb patterns subconsciously, building a vast internal database of what sounds natural, which is crucial for spontaneous speech production. Moreover, Reading expands your conceptual understanding, introducing you to diverse topics and perspectives articulated in English. This intellectual enrichment not only improves your language skills, but also makes you a more informed and interesting conversationalist, broadening your horizons significantly. Her advice to others struggling with the same, "I understand but can't speak," dilemma was simple. Embrace all three pillars. Read voraciously, listen actively, and practice speaking consistently, even if it's just to yourself initially. Don't wait for perfection. Start speaking today. The way of learning English is a marathon, not a sprint, she concluded. There will be good days and bad days, moments of triumph and moments of frustration. But persistence, coupled with a genuine love for the language and its culture, will ultimately lead to success. Elara's journey was a testament to the fact that fluency isn't about being perfectly grammatical, but about effective communication. It's about connection, expression, and the joy of sharing thoughts and ideas without inhibition, truly engaging with the world around you. She realized that the process of learning was never truly finished. Even native speakers continued to learn new words and expressions. It was a continuous journey of discovery and refinement, a lifelong engagement with a vibrant, evolving language that offered endless possibilities. Now, when Elara traveled, she no longer felt that familiar pang of anxiety. She could chat confidently with shopkeepers, engage in lively discussions in pubs, and truly experience the local culture without a linguistic barrier impeding her enjoyment, a truly liberating feeling. Her initial dream of speaking English like a Londoner had transformed into something richer. She spoke English as Elara, with her own unique flair, confidence, and a touch of the British charm she'd so diligently absorbed through her immersive learning process, becoming truly bilingual. This transformative journey from hesitant learner to confident speaker solidified her belief that anyone, with the right approach and unwavering dedication, could overcome the challenges of language acquisition and unlock their full communicative potential in English. So, if you're feeling stuck, remember Elara's story. Read, listen, and practice. Engage with English genuinely. Make it a part of your life, and soon you'll find your voice, blossoming into a fluent speaker, enjoying conversations, and expressing yourself with ease and confidence.